Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
And now a quote from Miguel de Cervantes in his novel Don Quixote. It is part of a wise man to keep himself today for tomorrow, and not venture all his eggs in one basket.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the Worry-Free Retirement, with your host, nationally recognized retirement specialist and six-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
Welcome, folks, to the Worry-Free Retirement. And yes, I am that little man in the sweater vest, retirement planning specialist and fiduciary, Tony Walker. And before we get started with our topic today, which includes having too many eggs in one basket, no, that's the old saying, and we're going to find out where that came from. But why you want to have all of your baskets under one roof, let me introduce to you in the Worry-Free production studios on this July 2nd, 2024, America's favorite financial sidekick, Mr. Aaron Orander, along with Louisville, Kentucky's most laid-back graphics artist, Mr. Derek Hudson. Oh, speaking of Aaron, I got to cut to you, Aaron. When I was researching this, people might be wondering, what was Aaron quoting and who was that? Actually, since the title of the show is having all of your baskets under one roof, this goes back to the old saying about not having all of your eggs in one basket, which as myself and my favorite son-in-law, Trey Jurgens, were researching for this show, that came up, and we said, where did that saying come from? Well, it came from, hope I'm pronouncing this right, I'm not a literary scholar, folks. Aaron is, we'll find that out. Miguel de Cervantes from the 1605 novel Don Quixote. So to help us truly understand where this came from, Aaron, take it away.
Man, I've got a lot of gray in my beard.
Hey, Aaron, Tony cut away to you. You're supposed to explain Don Quixote to us?
I'm supposed to explain Don Quixote? I don't know anything about Don Quixote. I mean, I don't even know what he looks like. That's why I got this shirt for this skit. I mean, yeah, I don't know anything about Don Quixote. Just because I've read some plays doesn't mean I know every single play in the world. What does he want me to say? I don't know what to say.
Yeah, he said you might feel this way. There's a chocolate bar in it for you.
All right, that's fine. Author Miguel de Cervantes was the fourth of 7 children in a family that originated in the minor gentry, but had come down in the world. His father was a barber surgeon who set bones, performed bloodlettings, and attended lesser medical needs. The family moved from town to town and may have been converso of Jewish descent.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. And we do have a really good show for you, folks. In fact, it's going to be a 2-part show. And the actual title, let's put up on full screen what our title graphic looks like today. Compliments of Derek Hudson. That's right. Why savers need everything under one roof. And to help us with today's show's content, come on in, my favorite nephew, Mr. Wes Walker. Good morning, Wes.
Good morning, Tony. How's it going?
Good, good. And real quick, some exciting news, if you don't mind sharing it with us on this July 2nd, 2024.
Yeah, so we were hooping and hollering in the office this morning. I passed level 2 of the CFA exam. So CFA stands for Chartered Financial Analyst. In our world, it's kind of the gold standard of investment certification. So have been really hoping and praying on this one. Wasn't sure if I'd get it or not, but able to pass this level 2, and then we'll take level 3 next year.
And that is so exciting. And folks, you might be wondering, it seems like y'all are talking more and more about investments. I thought y'all work with savers, and we do. Well, you'll find this out today, and then in our next show, Part 2, we work with savers. That's who we specialize in working with. However, sometimes savers are okay with some risk. One of the problems out there with our friendly competitors is all they think we do is annuities, and that's not all we do, folks. Obviously, annuities are a big part of what we do, but share a little bit about what you've learned in working at Tony Walker Financial, some of our goals with the investment section of what we do through our Charles Schwab platform.
Sure. what we see a lot of is people don't really know how to quantify risk. So to know how much risk is in their accounts, a lot of this exam and the studies behind it are in that vein. So helping to understand what someone has, how much they could stand to lose at any one point, and then making sure they're not taking too much risk that they wouldn't be comfortable with. So even though we work with savers, they might have some money in the market. They need to understand how much of that is exposed to major drawdowns, how much they could stand to lose, and if it really fits their risk tolerance.
Yeah, so we have some clients that have zero risk. They have all annuities or CDs or whatever. They say, I don't want to lose a penny, which would be my wife, Susan. And then we have some that say, hey, I don't mind putting 20 to 30% of my money at risk. That's fine. Mm-hmm. And that's the point of this program, folks. There is no one-size-fits-all. We've said this for years. Right now, I think we have about, as of the date of this recording, about $275 million with Schwab. Now, much of that is in CDs and money markets, but a lot of that money is in the market.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Go ahead and speak to that. Yeah,
there's a small percentage in individual stocks, too. That's kind of the differentiator. You'll see a lot of different advisory firms out there, wealth managers, asset managers, where most of their assets under management, that they call it, is in individual stocks and even actively managed mutual funds. I know we've got some topics on that today to talk about, but those things can be very risky, and I'm not sure that they're always monitoring the client's risk tolerance to those individual securities.
And let's talk about that because, the theme is, don't have all your eggs in one basket. I kind of agree to that to a sense. Where we're going with this is have everything under one roof. Remember, folks, we're first retirement planners. We're not money managers. We manage the money around a retirement plan, and I think that's the big difference. I think that's what you've kind of seen as you've looked at more and more portfolios. And, of course, you talk with now hundreds. How many clients of Tony Walker Financial have you ever met with in person or talked to over the phone?
Definitely in the hundreds, maybe in the thousands. I would say, talk to 10 to 15 different clients per day by phone and then sit in or orchestrate 2 to 3 meetings per day. So see quite a few people both in person and over the phone. And the big takeaway I've had from that is that, savers, they may not necessarily want a whole lot of risk. They might be okay with some of it, but it's got to pertain to their game plan and their individual situations. That's the key takeaway. It is differentiated by personality quite a bit.
Yeah, and we'll get into 3 personalities too, leading up to some good stuff. So back to this one stock. And even in our growth portfolio, and again, folks, we're not making recommendations on any particular stocks on this show. We're not going to even get into really percentages right now, but currently we don't have more than 5% of someone's assets in one stock. Has that kind of been our benchmark?
That's correct. And someone may have a portfolio where they've made discretionary buys themselves, meaning they've called up and said, I want to have X percent in X stock. And we'll facilitate that for them. They've got to sign off that they're okay with that risk. But in the portfolios that we manage, our 3 managed strategies, we don't have an allocation more than 5% to one individual stock.
And again, I think the reason we do that, we're going to be quoting John Bogle quite a bit. He had this comment. He said, if someone were to go to bed at night, we ask this question sometimes, and you woke up the next morning and your, quote, portfolio or 401k or whatever was down 20% the next morning, which that could happen, 20% the next morning, how would that make you feel? And he always says, if immediately you feel like you're going to jump off the cliff, you probably don't need to be that much in the market. So that's probably why we don't have one stock. It's not that we don't have necessarily confidence in one stock, but one stock could go down very quickly. You don't believe me? Just research Enron, folks.
Heavy.
So that's why we have to think through things like that. Now let's get to Bogle. And we've got several articles to cover, too. But before we get into why you need everything under one roof, which is the purpose of this show, what is this is one of the great books ever written, John Bogle on Investing, the First 50 Years. What is kind of your take on Mr. Bogle? And in your mind, now that you're studying investment so much, what is he really known for, the wisdom he had about things?
We talked last week or a few weeks ago about Warren Buffett, and that would be considered an active manager, someone who goes out and picks individual stocks or buys companies full freight. What John Bogle did and what he's kind of famous for was this concept of broad diversification in a major index. So when you look up and you see the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, the Dow Jones, all they're just indexes where you take the largest companies or the fastest growing companies or whatever the benchmark is and conglomerate them all together. You buy the whole haystack, as John Bogle would say.
Yep. I saw somebody steal his line, though, about trying to find the needle in the haystack. I said, wait a minute, that was Bogle. Go ahead, though.
You've got to put an asterisk down there at the bottom. John Bogle, 1974, whenever he said that.
Yeah.
But the idea is that as these companies, it may not be the same companies, but as these companies grow and their market caps get bigger and bigger and bigger, you will benefit from the growth of that index rather than the growth of these individual companies. So, the index, I don't know the exact numbers. Back in the 90s, the S&P was probably 1,000 points or something. Now it's at 5,000 points. So a 5x return on your money, you didn't have to do anything. You didn't have to pick an individual stock. You didn't have to know when to get in, when to get out. You bought the whole haystack and just watched it grow. And that was his real kind of modus operandi. Buy everything, keep the costs low, and hold it for a long period of time, and typically you'll do pretty well.
And I think that's the thing, and we're not criticizing money managers, but there's a lot of money managers out there boasting they can make all this money for you. And Bogle said that if you're going to be charging 1.5%, and then you have maybe expense ratios on top of that up to 2%, it's going to be hard to beat a market that basically has no headwinds against it.
That's correct.
So what we're trying to do, folks, again, we're not trying to beat the money managers. We're not trying to beat the market. That's not what we do as retirement planning specialists. We're trying to fit that into the original game plan and the process we've set up for the clients. So speak to that a little bit. What percentage roughly, because I know we've done some studies or looked at some studies done on this over the years, the percentage of money managers, or maybe the S&P has beat the money managers. Go over those historical returns.
Yeah, so the further you go out, the longer you make the time period, the worse the performance of the active manager looks. So over a 1 year period, about 60% of funds underperform the S&P. That means underperform. So that means about 40% beat it.
Okay.
Over 1 year, it's not bad. Over a 5 year period, about 80% of funds underperformed the S&P. So this time only about 20% have beaten it. You extend that period out to 15 years, about 90% underperform, so worse than the S&P. And if you take it out even further over a 20-year period, 94% of active managers underperform the S&P 500.
Which is why Bogle, and we try to follow some of these tenets, that's why we only charge 0.8%. He said, keep your costs down, make sure your risk is manageable to your personality. All these things we try to do at Tony Walker Financial. So you might be sitting there going, Tony, I don't really have anybody I think that's looking out for my best interest. We just constantly are shuffling these investments around like a deck of cards. One of the biggest concerns I see is people coming in, they don't understand what they've got, and they don't understand the fees. Are you running into that somewhere? They've got these managed accounts, and they have no clue what's going on.
Constantly. And you might look at your performance. I've had this happen a few times. They'll look at their performance. Well, the S&P is up 30% this year. I thought I'm in the stock market. No, it turns out you're in a bunch of mall REITs that you have no idea what they are. And the values of those have gone down and commercial real estate's gone down. So knowing what you have is probably first and foremost most important. And then second, but a near first to that, is making sure that those investments suit your risk tolerance. What are you able to handle risk-wise?
That's really good. We'll get into the three personalities in a little while. Folks, we'll be right back. What I'm going to do, I've got my cheat notes here. Trey did a good job outlining this show. Again, if you're just now joining us, you might say, well, is this a new format or not? It's totally new format. Now, a minute, I'm going to be still talking about what the Bible has to say about money on the TV show. We've got the top 10 reasons for consolidating all of your investments under one roof. So when we come back, I'm going to go back to the monitor. We're going to talk about this. This is really good stuff. Again, this is part 1. Next week, we'll finish up with part 2. We'll have you back in the studio to talk some more on the TV show, and we'll talk also on the radio show a little more at length at some of these investments. But stay tuned, folks. Some good stuff coming your way, and why you want to have all those eggs under one roof. I'm Tony Walker. We'll be right back. Our client spotlight today shines brightly on Mike and Dawn Bierman. First of all, Biermans, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I moved down here 2 years ago from outside Chicagoland area. Worked 37 years with Borg Warner Automotive, and they closed up, and so I moved down here to start a new chapter.
I was a career RN. I worked 38 years as a nurse, and we were just ready to make that move.
Well, of course, for Tony Walker Financial's sake, we're certainly glad you moved to Bowling Green, Kentucky. So basically, what prompted you to contact Tony Walker Financial and inevitably end up working with us?
Well, we were approaching 59 and a half, and we just really wanted to see where we stood and what our options were as far as our future.
And now that you're officially retired, actually you've picked up a part-time gig. Tell the audience what you're doing right now.
Yeah, we're doing school jobs, so we really enjoy it a lot, only working
36 weeks a year.
Yeah.
We're off at 2:30 every day. It's 16 weeks vacation. It's just a perfect setup for us.
And of course, since you haven't reached age 65, this new gig has really helped with the health insurance.
Absolutely.
And what have you enjoyed most about working with Tony Walker Financial?
The ease. I mean, you guys have been great. You're extremely responsive. From the minute we walked in the door, we felt comfortable. The options were laid out clear to us. It was explained thoroughly. We couldn't have asked for anything more.
Any thoughts, Mr. Bierman, and also a little bit about the game plan we provided you? Did that help in making your decision to formally retire and kind of, as you say, begin this new chapter?
Well, yes, definitely. Just how you had everything laid out and well organized. It was a game changer coming here.
Well, Biermans, thank you so much for working with Tony Walker Financial.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you realize that if you have more than $250,000 in retirement assets, the government could tax as much as 40% of it when you go to take it out? And with current tax rates set to expire in 2025, the taxes you will owe on your 401k could climb even higher. Don't wait until 2025 to see how much Uncle Sam will take of your money. Get a game plan by logging on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement. Our topic today is why savers should consider putting all of their eggs under one roof, part 1. Remember, next week we'll conclude with part 2. Some really good stuff here, and especially for those of you who feel like you're going it alone. You're worried for many reasons as to why you might want to consider this. We've got our top 10 here, so let's take a quick look. Number 1, consistent, simplified management of everything. Now, we've referenced earlier, but this is a great book. The famed investor John Bogle, who basically was credited with starting the Vanguard funds. I'm a big John Bogle fan. This book is called The First 50 Years. But let me read to you what he says. This is really interesting, a great book for just a lot of wisdom. Now, he's talking about investments, but I would say this would apply to a game plan through a retirement planning firm like Tony Walker Financial. I'll read to you. He says, the ideal investment program includes 4 elements: simplicity, focus, efficiency, and stewardship, to which I would say amen to that, and something we try to always accomplish with our processes that we put in place to make sure savers worry less about money. Let's go to number 2 reasons why you need to consider having everything under one roof. Again, reduced fees and expenses. Folks, let's admit it, most of you have no clue what's being charged on your accounts, especially when you have multiple accounts spread all over God's creation. That's the other thing Mr. Bogle talks about. Between taxes and fees charged, basically that's going to add up, listen, to about 5% of expenses. So think about that. That means you're going to have to earn 5% on your money just to combat the fees and expenses. Now that's ridiculous. So if I could show you a way to reduce fees, that's why we only charge 0.8%, by the way, or in some of our cases, many of our annuities don't even have fees, and also through our tax planning department, reduce your taxes. Again, that's more money in your pocket and less risk we have to take with your investment. Number 3, streamline communication. If you look at our Google reviews at TonyWalkerFinancial.com, the majority of people, almost all of them, will say, these folks now know how to communicate. I know who to talk to. They promptly return my phone calls. They're very organized, and I'm able to find the right person to answer my question immediately. Everything we do at Tony Walker Financial is in-house. So although we work with the big boys like Charles Schwab and all these insurance companies, you don't deal with them, you deal with us. A huge advantage of having Tony Walker Financial on your side. Better tax coordination. Here's a real concern I have. Again, like my granddad, he didn't have to worry about taxes. He didn't even have a 401k. Many of you have these multiple accounts, 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs. I want to know who's going to coordinate all the taxes when you go to have to take this money out. At Tony Walker Financial, again, at no additional cost, we'll do all this for you. In fact, we have 2 certified tax experts that are there to help our clients, whether it's calculating RMDs, Roth conversions, QCDs, how much money to withhold when we start sending you that beloved mailbox money. No matter what the situation is, if you're a client, we're going to do our best to make sure those taxes are coordinated and you're not paying a lot of unnecessary taxes. And finally, this is all the time we have left. We're going to cover the next 5 next week. Consistent investment strategy. So at Tony Walker Financial, through our Charles Schwab platform, we have 5 different strategies. And what we do is, although we're picking everything for you, we're going to make sure you fit into a strategy that you like and you're comfortable with, and that we're going to manage that strategy. Folks, we're not out here trying to beat the market. We're not trying to time the market. We're not trying to put your money at all kinds of risk just to try to grow it. We're trying to, first of all, protect that money. Of course, we have several strategies. If you want to take a little bit of risk with it, that's fine. But overall, we have a strategy behind the strategies. We're going to follow that strategy, and we're going to communicate with you what we're doing in terms of how we invest the money within each particular strategy. So that's you right now. If you're looking at there and going, yeah, I never really thought about this, Tony. Why would I want to put everything under one roof? It's these reasons right here, and we're going to cover 5 more next week. So if you feel like you're going it alone, why don't you at least give us an opportunity to talk and tell you more about our services? Just log on right now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Or give us a call anytime at 877-499-9255.
On your TV show and in your commercials, you warn savers about the year 2025, possibly eroding their retirement savings. What is the significance of 2025?
Well, in 2025, some of the lowest tax rates in the history of this country will, let me repeat, they will expire. And while nobody can predict what Congress is going to do when they expire, most experts, including myself, feel that the easiest thing to do is for Congress to just simply let them roll back to the 2017 rates, which means for those with at least $250,000 in retirement assets, you're going to be paying more in taxes, which is why I encourage people to contact us before 2025. In other words, get a game plan in place now to see how we can reduce taxes now versus waiting for them to go up later.
With these current low tax rates expiring in 2025, what can savers do now to prepare for them possibly going up in the future?
Well, first and foremost, you have to have a written game plan in place before rushing to strategies pitched by the financial world to save on taxes. But there's lots of options we can explore with savers, things like Roth conversions. There's something called qualified charitable distributions, or QCDs, accelerating distributions now by staying in lower tax brackets, and even gifting money to family members now rather than waiting to leave it to them after you die. So we can assist savers in thinking through their options now rather than putting off those tax rates and potentially higher rates in the future. Having worked in the retirement planning field for 40 years, I know it's not just about how much money you've saved for retirement, but making sure you one day don't run out of money. That's where mailbox money comes in.
Mailbox money!
A reliable, lifelong income, much like the pension plans from the past. If you're interested in turning your 401k into mailbox money, let's talk. Just set up your free 10-minute phone call with myself at TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Today's show is based on my experience in working with thousands of savers, and it deals with this truth. As one ages through retirement, in most cases, it is in the best interest of the saver to consolidate their assets under the roof of a retirement planning firm who truly understands retirement. Yet, the problem with this understanding lies not in our ability to assist savers with all the complexities and changes that retirement offers up. It is this notion that all people are wired the same when it comes to their understanding of money, and more importantly, how God has wired us all differently in terms of our desire to invest money and take risk with it. This is why years ago I spent a lot of time and a lot of money researching this notion of how differently God has wired us for risk, and not only wrote a book called The 3 Personalities of Money, but also created, with the help of a few psychology professors from Western Kentucky University who assisted in the creation of what I call the 3 Personalities of Money financial quiz. And it's there to help people diagnose their true financial personality. That is, whether that person's financial personality is that of a saver, investor, or speculator. The Bible exposes this truth as well, where we see in Matthew 25:14, a master gives a sum of money to 3 different servants to manage, and here's what happens. The first servant immediately puts the money to work and thus doubles the master's money. The second servant, although given not quite as much money to manage, in short order proudly doubles the master's money again. Then we have the third servant who is handed only one talent. And what does he do? Well, we assume from the scripture that out of fear doesn't even invest it at all or even run over to the local bank to get some interest. No, this servant buries it in the backyard. Note the reaction of the master who, upon returning from his trip, finds out that the third servant did not even get interest on the money. Why? Well, let's look at all three. First, in my humble opinion, the first servant, his financial personality was probably that of a speculator. He rolled the dice and got a lot of money in return. The second servant didn't have quite as much money. He was probably an investor. Again, he invested the money, possibly with some speculation, and he as well doubled his money. So who is this third servant? Well, I think it was probably a saver who was much more concerned with the return of their money than the return on it. Yet, here's the point of this story. The saver could have at least earned interest on the money they wished to protect. And maybe that's you right now. You are scared to death of investing your money into risky things like the stock market. You remember all those times that the stock market tanked, and instead of at least getting some interest, what do? Well, you're probably kind of figuratively burying it in the backyard. Well, folks, that's not the definition of stewardship. Stewardship is doing the best you can with what you've got, while at the same time recognize and staying with your financial personality. Which is why at Tony Walker Financial, we only work with savers. We understand that you don't want to take a lot of risk, and this is why we have developed ways to protect your money while at the same time making sure that you at least earn some interest on it and without the fear of one day running out. So if that's you. If you'd like to learn how to use, enjoy, and protect your hard-earned money in retirement, of course, without the fear of running out of it, don't bury it in the backyard. Instead, contact us to see how we might be of service to you. And boy, we made this real easy and with no cost or obligation. In fact, we call it the free 10-minute fiduciary phone call. And here's how easy it is to speak with myself, Tony Walker, about your situation. Right now, simply log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. You're going to see a little red box there. If you click on that, that information is going to be sent to our offices, and we will contact you to arrange that free phone call with myself and yourself to see what's going on right now. Then, if it warrants, you and I are going to meet in person to discuss your situation in more detail, and we can do that at either our Bowling Green, Louisville, or Lexington, Kentucky offices. Again, it's free, no obligation, no cost. And if you're not really into the internet and would rather just call us 24/7, no problem. Operators are standing by to answer your call, so give us a call. 877-499-9255. Well, we hope you've enjoyed today's program. Remember, we're coming back with having all your eggs under one roof, part 2. But between now and then, you be worry-free and you make it a good one.